Project Lawful aka Planecrash by Arwayne aka Eliezer Yudkowsky and Lintamande.
Is he planning to give her the option of throwing away her vows to save the universe? Or is this all about the chance she'll think of some way around them while disallowed from thinking about them, or disassociate from the Carissa who made them or something? And how likely is he considering that? It matters, kind of a lot. She's not entirely sure that it should, but on Carissa's own concept of this, which she knows is flawed enough she should not act on it, would not act on it, until and unless she understands it better, on Carissa's concept of this, if someone is enforcing your vows with magic and you find a way around the magic, that's just fair play. If they trusted you, and she's not actually sure she ought to be trusted in that way, she isn't a lawful being yet, she isn't sure she grows up into one, but if they trusted you, then it's much, much more important to be someone they were right to trust. Maybe that will all seem insane when she's smarter.
He does not in fact think that it's possible for INT-29 himself to keep INT-29, Carissa contained, short of continuously monitoring her with detect thoughts every minute and forcing them to sleep at synchronized times, and maybe not even then. Once the detecting thought stops, she's definitely being trusted. There's some things he can do to try to reduce the expected damage from incorrect trust, like try to detect if she cannot stop herself from visibly to him shutting down a thought about how she no longer believes in oaths or conditionally cooperating in the cooperation defection dilemma. He can't avoid needing to trust her promise. He can try to make sure that she's still the kind of person who he's correct to trust. He's hoping that Carissa can grow up into a lawful being where he can see that. And if that was only a lie that she put on to fool his detect thoughts, and the real Carissa deep inside herself wells up and shoves that aside and discards it, then that deep Carissa is the person he's trusting and has no choice but to trust, given the promises he's already made to not just statue her and to augment her to match himself, which he knew then would lead to this point. He just wants to make sure that the Carissa inside Carissa knows what lawfulness is, what promises mean. See in her mind that at least some part of Carissa understands, before Detect Thoughts ends and the deeper Carissa makes her real choice. If it will help, he can take off the earring that forces her to speak truth to him and keep her promises after the Detect Thoughts ends. If by then she appears to him as one who understands the lawfulness the inner Carissa would have to cast aside. He does not want to play with Carissa the game that Cheliax played with her. He does not want her calculating the entire time whether he'll later ask her a question she'll be forced to answer truthfully, and on that basis censor her thoughts, which is why he has not already been asking every day up until now whether she's been plotting to betray him in the back of her mind. He does not want Carissa herself wondering if her choices to coordinate were made out of fear of the Geish. He does hope that they will reach a state with each other where nothing is hidden anymore, where their minds can just meet. But he can promise beforehand, even, that he won't ask for mutual detect thoughts again, or any truth spells, will wait for her to offer it, if it matters to her that she doesn't need to fear it. He believes INT-29. Carissa could defeat measures like detect thoughts or truth spells, even as used by him, so he's already required to trust her, and if it helps that he trusts her more visibly, he can trust her a little more in reality, and much more visibly.
Oh, Carissa does not know if she'll grow up into a lawful being, but it's not that there are very many things that could conceivably be more important than being someone people are right to trust. She isn't sure if she was right to trust Keltham, if he was right to trust her. But she'll do the mutual detect thoughts if he wants, if he'll take the earring off afterwards, if he wants them to try to walk the road ahead where they don't betray each other even though they want to. She didn't know that he was still trying at that.
They've been reaching out hands to each other from the beginning. He'll never not reach back. They may not always succeed in clasping hands, because reality and mathematics aren't so kind, but he'll never stop trying to reach out towards her, while she's still trying to reach out towards him. Shall they?
Yeah, all right.
Pilar watches Redul the Necromancer. Not that she believes this is his real name. This does not feel like the vibe of a man who uses his real name often, walk away down streets of fire. Trailing Keltham, who seemed normal in the way of somebody who is carefully constructing a seeming about himself and chose normality that day, and that's horrible. He used to be so open. Then she turns to Ione. So what are we doing here exactly?
The same thing everybody does in the city of Brass, Pilar. Shopping.
Shopping! Apparently, as distinct from normal shopping as practiced by normal sane people, starts with Pilar donning her disguise cloak and prestidigitating her hair back to its natural color underneath that. Because apparently, Cheliax and Hell are going to be analyzing this event later, and Pilar visibly being part of it would unacceptably mislead Aspexia Rugaton about the degree to which this whole event serves Cheliax's interests. They should not hinder Keltham on this shopping trip, but they absolutely should not help him, if they're to avoid hindering Asmodeus's interests.
Oh, where obviously I hate Asmodeus and want him to die as painfully as is possible for a god. But things are decision theoretically complicated, and we're in something like a cooperation defection dilemma. I don't need to grab after every possible short-term advantage of my side against Asmodeus, because that's not what grown-ups do. Hint, hint. It's just like how Keltham is bringing us here and letting us go shopping here at all, because he correctly trusts that we'll only serve our interests in ways that don't hinder his interests. To put it another way, I know Nethys wouldn't allow us to be here if it was going to mislead Cheliax and injure Asmodeus because I hadn't warned you to disguise yourself. Not that I'd need Nethys to enforce it in my case. I just wouldn't upset a multi-agent cooperative arrangement where somebody trusted me, even if I could benefit from doing that. But even if I wasn't that type of person, I'd know that Nethys was good at predicting me, and that choosing to upset the arrangement is like choosing not to be here in the first place.
That sounds like Keltham is doing something here that goes against Asmodeus's interests.
He sure is.
And I should not stop what he's doing because...
Snack Service wouldn't have arranged with Keltham to bring you here, as does separately benefit Asmodeus relative to the default course of Keltham coming here, and you never hearing about it at all, if that action hadn't been beneficial to Caden Kalian and Asmodeus. You shutting down Keltham would benefit Asmodeus, but injure Caden Kalian.
And if I were to note that I don't remember agreeing to this compact, Snack Service seizes my body?
Nope. Nethys correctly predicts how that plays out, and Snack Service doesn't bring you here in the first place.
I'm already here.
Were you not paying attention to literally anything Keltham told you in decision theory class?
I was. I'm just complaining.
Oh, grow up. Did your remaining superiors in Cheliax stop hurting you for minor acts of pathetic whining and now you've forgotten how that works?
Possibly.
This is perfectly straightforward by the new standards of our awful existences. The decorrelated physical event of you shutting down Keltham would help Asmodeus and injure Caden Kalian. So if that outcome was the high probability consequence of bringing you here, Snack Service wouldn't do it, so your choice to shut down Keltham would injure Asmodeus via you not being here at all. Sure, even Nethys can't predict events like that perfectly, but it's also your interest to be more predictable about things like this, not try to randomize, because then Snack Service can use you for more Asmodeus beneficial interventions.
I get it, Ione. I'm not stupid. I just don't like it. And you are not my superior and don't have the power to order me to stop whining.
Grow up, Pilar. Grow up very quickly so you can be used for tasks that actually matter.
The actual shopping trip starts with Ione making a beeline for an enormous brass edifice with literal, actual mithril fittings about it. Some sort of absurdly high-class interdimensional brothel, with a symbol that Ione points out as meaning wishes granted here. If you have a wish diamond and the rest of some exorbitant price, presumably. And then Ione pays over 20 platinum pieces just to be allowed to speak to the proprietor, and 200 PP more for the enormous fiery proprietor to swear to absurd secrecy conditions, after which Ione goes off to negotiate in privacy with the proprietor. Leaving Pilar alone in the waiting chamber of a high-class interdimensional brothel, with various things, mostly female insofar as they have an identifiable gender at all, trying to flirt with her and entice her into a dalliance that costs as much as a +2 headband of vast intelligence would have cost a year earlier.
Did you do that on purpose? Pilar says to Ione when she eventually emerges from her mysterious dealings.
I sincerely don't know what you're talking about.
Right then. Pilar will follow Ione out of the brothel.
Okay, see, but now I want to know what you're talking about.
No.
I suppose we can conduct the whole trip on that basis, but it'll make it less fun. And maybe less beneficial to Asmodeus, too. How about if you're nice to me and tell me, and then I'll be nice to you?
Fine. The entire time you were gone, I spent with various things trying to seduce me into spending a few hours with them, in exchange for a large gem or magic item.
You know you're just allowed to tell them all no and to leave you alone until I get back, right?
Weren't you supposed to be nice back to me now?
So I was. Here's 40,000 platinum pieces worth of spending money. Not for anything in particular, just if anything catches your eye while we're wandering around. Ione hands over a bag that would be much heavier if it wasn't mostly huge faceted rubies and other gemstones.
What the fuck did you sell to her?
Some of Doomlord's stuff. I'd say it's not important and not to worry about it, but I'd be lying.
Is there a point at which I get read in on this whole Doomlord business?
Yes, actually. It's the point at which you're sufficiently reliably a grown-up that you can be trusted to act on that information, granted you on that basis, only in ways that benefit Caden Kylian and Asmodeus, rather than trying to seize as much benefit for Asmodeus as possible.
I have, in fact, been incredibly fucking cooperative about that. Since the day that snack service first told me I couldn't arrest a group of Osirian spies because surprise compact I never agreed to.
Yeah, but you also spent the entire 4 months whining about it, and that does not encourage trust on genuinely serious matters, Pilar.
I perceive that going all the way over to good doesn't change the extent to which one is an enormous bitch, then. I'd wondered.
And you're not an enormous bitch?
First of all, I'm evil. What's your excuse? And second, no, actually, I just have a huge case of resting bitch face, which is probably something like 70% of how I was able to still be considered a serious Asmodean after I started going around giving people cookies.
Surprisingly valid.
Pilar doesn't answer because she's staring at the display window of the bottom level of a 5-story building, trying to deal with the thought her brain just had and the subsequent complete thought crash.
What you looking at? Ooh, metamagic rods. Yes, Pilar, that's right. You want them. You have plenty of spending money. You should go in and buy all the cool ones. Do it, Pilar. It'll make you a better Asmodean. Do it.
Wow, you are so bad at that dark hissing voice of corruption, what with still sounding like a teenage girl.
Don't need to expend an auditory illusion on sounding better. You're not going to be that hard to corrupt.
Yeah, fair. Pilar Pineda heads into the store, which has all the metamagic rods with a weird spring in her step and an odd light feeling in her heart. This is evil, right? She's being evil right now. She's sure this is what Abigail Thrune would do in her place. Shopping must be evil.
When Pilar gets back out, Ione is talking with a collared being that looks like a dwarf with brazen skin and hair of literal fire. Whatever they had to say, they were apparently just finishing up, because Ione nods and pays over a small handful of platinum and then turns back to Pilar. Congratulations! I'm guessing this is the first time in your life you've wanted something for yourself and then acted in order to get it?
Nah, that's private is all. I do it, I just don't do it where you can see me.
Lies.
I have done that before on as many as several occasions in my life, all of which I can remember individually.
Okay, we need to stop quipping at each other using our shiny splendor headbands and go start the actual mission. We're looking for places that offer the service of selling 5 wish sequences if you bring in 5 wish diamonds, and then I go in and swear them to the extreme negotiation secrecy conditions, and then I go engage in mysterious secret negotiations, and then I come out again. We need to find 12 places like that. We can buy basically anything we want along the way.
Look, I can see where this is going.
Can you?
Yeah, you're waiting for me to ask why we're doing this, and then you tell me that I can't be told because I won't reliably react only in a way that benefits both Caden Kylian and Asmodeus.
I don't, in fact, tell you that. You are able to figure that out for yourself without being told, and it is better that way. You are likewise perfectly able to figure out the other thing I'm not saying because it's better for you to see it yourself.
That I kept complaining about how I never, at any point, volunteered to be part of any such compact, and how I never made a bargain like that. So you're waiting for me to actually say of my own will that I'll be part of this thing, and only use the information to benefit Asmodeus in ways that don't harm Caden Kylian.
Mm-hmm. Up until this point, you've never been knowingly faced with a serious choice like that, Pilar. Only mysterious commands you didn't understand. You've never had to knowingly look at a serious case where you could benefit Asmodeus a lot, but you needed to turn away or only help Asmodeus a little, because that was the condition under which you were granted the information. Past that point, we're no longer comfortable just telling you that you need to predictably behave yourself, or we'll have retroactively not included you in the fun.
I have to agree explicitly.
No, worse.
I have to ask.
Yes.
So you're actually doing that thing where you make the torture victim ask to be hurt more. Who knew that Good did that too?
Grow the fuck up, Pilar. Use decision theory instead of just letting other agents with better decision theory use you. Stop whining about being given chances to advance your own interests just because they're not simple and don't let you do whatever you feel like. And also quit complaining if the other grown-ups here want you to behave like a grown-up too. Someone who pursues her own decision theoretically non-simple interests instead of having to be pushed into that every time.
What if I don't wanna, though?
You follow me around on this shopping trip and don't ask questions. Maybe Mr. Doomlord destroys Cheliax or something because you couldn't properly help. Who knows? Mr. Doomlord sure does seem like an ominous, mysterious figure. But what do you care about that, so long as you're comfortably not making your own decisions?
All right, shut up and let me think about this.
Your will, mistress.
Pilar starts to snap at Ione not to do that, then stops with a feeling of odd disorientation as she realizes that being called mistress wasn't as wrong-feeling as it should have been on Pilar's model of Pilar. She follows Ione around the city of Brass instead, thinking, she doesn't ask why snack service is being so quiet in case it answers. It's nice to be alone in her head for a time.
Is that a rod of wonder being advertised for sale?
It is. Ione will buy it. People mostly stopped making wild magic items in Galarian after Prophecy stopped working there. But it's a fun thing to have around if you're a Nethesian and interested in scaring the utter shit out of people afraid you might actually use it. Come on, Pilar, don't just think. Buy random expensive shit. We're not just on any shopping trip. We're on an epic multiversal shopping trip, such as whose like may never be seen again.
The fact that you consider this to be valid reasoning does not give me confidence in the rest of what you consider valid reasoning.
Yo, say that, but that shop's got a racing broom of flying, and I'ma buy it if you don't admit you want it in the next 5 seconds.
No, you can have it. You need it more. What with you not being able to cast fly yourself?
No takebacks. Ione rushes into the store to make what will later turn out to be the worst purchase of her life.
Why does the thought of participating in this awful madness herself feel as terrifying as it does? Why is it important that she label in her thoughts as madness what has started over months that felt like years to make an awful kind of sense? Why does she need to call it awful sense? Why not just sense? This is usually where snack service would step in and say something. Maybe snack service is hiding itself away on the elemental plane of fire where prophecy still operates. Or maybe it's just that snack service knows Pilar can figure this out on her own and needs to do that instead of being told things.
A fiery being with the head of a giant snake, the lower body of a giant snake, and a humanoid torso carrying a spear comes over and tries to bother Pilar.
You need to speak Infernal or I can't understand your attempts to bother me, Pilar says in Infernal, and then goes back to thinking. It's probably her looming sense of horrible dread about whatever comes after this for Pilar, as might be gated behind her asking to participate.
How about if the salamander tries to bother her with a spear?
Harm, quickened ray of frost.
When Ione comes out, she'll see the collapsed body of a salamander, not moving. Pilar, that's... Outsiders don't get afterlives. They can't be resurrected. They don't have souls. They are... Did you forget?
Pilar holds up the merciful metamagic rod she just bought. Obviously, Pilar just did it that way to avoid entanglement with local law enforcement, and not because Carissa Savar would have cried pathetic tears about it. Pilar is not Savar's student anymore.
Ione doesn't say anything in response to this, probably wisely.
They head on into an incredibly fancy-looking restaurant which only serves one patron at a time, accepts payment in magic items only, and also, apparently, grants up to 5 wishes in sequence if you've got the diamonds. Why, who knows?
Sure, Ione will pay a fee of 2,000 GP to cover the case where they can't come to an agreement about the mysterious deal to be further negotiated. She'll then vanish from Pilar's sight and come back 6 minutes later, looking noticeably more cheerful, and head out of the restaurant with a spring in her step. 1 down, 11 to go, she says, her voice sounding more vibrant and forceful than before.
Fine, I'm fucking asking. Please tell me what the fuck we're doing, and I will only use that information in ways that benefit Caden, Kylian, and Asmodeus.
And that don't harm Keltum, who brought us along on this trip, and gave over some of Doomlord's hoard to spend, on the basis of expecting that it would not be used to harm his interests, and would benefit them at least slightly. You will accept the words of myself or snack service when it comes to which ways of using that information will harm Keltham, Caden Kylean, or Asmodeus.
Agreed. Now what's going on?
Hold on, this takes more concentration if I'm outside a library. The sounds around them hush. So, first, what do you think is going on?
Doomlord had enough wish diamonds that I can get a +5 bonus to my primary casting stat, which I guess is Splendor these days, which is the treatment that Doomlord planned for himself and I'm supposed to get. Tropes suggest that Doomlord actually had 20 wish diamonds, and Keltham, Carissa, and you are all getting boosted the same way. For some reason, it's important that nobody knows exactly which Efreet performed the service for us.
What follows is true, but not the whole story. Mr. Doomlord is from a planet not in this plane that didn't have access to 9th-level wizards, or the City of Brass to convert wish diamonds into wishes. Wish-sized diamonds are a lot cheaper there. The plan is for us to get all of our ability stats wished up.
Ione, it's not that I lack all sense of eagerness here, but this sounds increasingly like a really large fucking issue. Not like telling Cheliax, like telling the World Wound Alliance sort of issue.
That sure is some common sense there. So how'd that work out for you in Corvosa?
How loud can I scream without that getting out of your sound barrier?
It is contrary to the nature of my library powers that they be used for horrified screaming rather than privacy and solitude.
Disappointing. Let me know if you spot a scroll of silence for sale so I can get my screaming done at some point. Did Keltham get all of Doomlord's diamonds?
He's got all of Doomlord's stuff, as already stated.
How much of a problem is Keltham going to be now?
From whose perspective?
Anyone's perspective. Have you met Keltham?
Technically, I'm the only girl he's still dating. And Keltham already donated the vast majority of Doomlord's remaining diamonds, minus this expedition, to the Church of Iomade, which you're not allowed to warn Cheliax about because that hinders the interests of Caden Kylean and Keltham.
Okay, that's very bad, incredibly bad, extremely bad, and yet I'm still feeling relieved. Is the Church of Iomade by any chance under a constraint not to do things with the diamonds that harm Asmodeus's interests?
Nope.
Does Asmodeus lose Cheliax as a result of this?
I won't say that I don't know, because I do. But I will say that it depends on people's choices, including yours.
It's strange, it's surprising that Pilar can be feeling. Alongside other horrors, she's obviously horrified that Asmodeus might lose Cheliax. Of course she is. And hearing that it depends on her own choices is making her nauseous, feeling wounded that Keltham would do that to Cheliax. Savar tried so hard to not hurt Keltham's feelings, more than she had to, issued multiple commands about that. Does Keltham have any idea what Cheliax and Savar could have done to him? Without breaking any of Asmodeus's directives, if they had actually wanted to crush his spirit. Because Sever wanted to preserve the chance that Cheliax and Keltham could ally if he grew up and went evil. And then, Keltham turns around and does this to them. They'd have been better off fucking breaking him.
Ione Sala says nothing at all, expresses no opinions.
Was this entire thing, the whole thing with snack service, about making Keltham not doing anything more stupid with the wish diamonds, is that how it served Asmodeus? No, it can't be that. Snack service is just too large of an intervention. She cannot speak of it, but Caden Kylean is dying over this. Whatever this is, snack service sold his guaranteed death to Dispater. It can't just be about Doomlord's diamond hoard.
Correct.
If I get my 6 ability stats wished up, the price of that is being unable to oppose Caden Kylean or Keltham at all from now on. Unless I could have done it completely with my current abilities. Because past today, almost everything I do, everything I can do, including any growing I do from there, will be partially the result of the people and the gods who set me up to get +5s to all ability stats.
Correct. You don't have to decide immediately. We can find another 5 places that grant 5 wish sequences before you actually have to decide.
Okay. You still haven't really explained anything. I made the promise of my own will, and by now that I'm lawful and keep my compacts, including that particular kind of compact. And you still haven't explained much of anything.
You'll figure a lot of it out yourself, after you're wished up, and then put on the artifact headband.
Oh, somehow she hadn't made that connection. Do you swear to me that all of this, not just today's choice, the entire fucking thing since the beginning, that it's all being carried out in a way that's of Abadar, not Asmodeus? where this isn't some clever trap to indebt me to Caden Kylian and prevent me from benefiting Asmodeus more, as I would have done on my own. Not just that exact thing being ruled out, but everything like that?
I mean, Abadar wouldn't have set up your family to end up in Axis without asking you, but it's a theoretically complicated bargain being made around your past and future selves that cares in that way and looks out for people's interests in ways that they didn't know to ask for, that they'd have predictably wanted later. You're not ultimately being used in a cruel way where they go ha-ha afterwards. At least if things go the way that we hoped, that was predicted to me. The result won't be worse for you than if you'd done nothing or had no capacity to do anything. The results from your perspective won't be worse than if you'd been a rock with the same utility function. I can swear to that, and do swear to that.
Am I being offered anything remotely resembling a fucking real choice here? Because if so, I'm missing it.
No, you're being used. Used to achieve your own interests, but still used.
Hearing you be honest about that is helpful. Will I think that all of this was a good idea? That I made the right choice here after I get wished up and put on the headband?
You'll wish you'd figured out other things you haven't figured out before coming to the City of Brass and being given information and taken options you didn't see. Of the options you do see, you'll endorse that you chose to get wished up. You'll know that if you'd been a person who'd have figured it all out and acted earlier, Caden Kalian wouldn't have invited you in or given you as much information as you already had. You might not approve of the entire macro event that's going on. You'll prefer having been part of it to having been left out, and see that you were used in your own interests and not against them, in a sense that's deep and real. I so swear.
Okay.
We'll do yours next, then. I'm planning to hang out in the City of Brass doing even more shopping afterwards.
Like ominous shopping of destiny, or...
No, just fucking around and having fun, because this is great.
I'd say that I'm glad somebody here is having fun, but I'd be lying.
Pilar? Let me tell you one of life's deepest secrets. No matter what else is at stake, and no matter what else is going on around you, no matter what ominous storm gathers just over the horizon out of sight, no matter what you don't know, and no matter what you're already afraid you know, anybody who can't have fun as a sixth circle oracle on a City of Brass shopping trip with an unlimited budget is fucking doing it wrong. Now, how about if we get you a permanent intrinsic +5 to all ability stats, and you try not to whine about that? Is this some kind of subby thing? Because for somebody who grew up in Cheliax, it's amazing how much you whine.
Ione has a point. Not that Pilar is going to admit it, but she does. Wait a minute. Ione's already been to wish shops. She's already got +5 splendor on top of her headband. Probably got that in the first one she visited. That fucker.
5 constitution, 5 dexterity, 5 strength.
She doesn't ask why Ione is doing this in that order, because she already knows. It's a kind of gentleness, and Ione is good.
5 splendor.
She can just take the headband off beforehand and not change too much that way, right away.
5 intelligence.
She's worn the +6 intelligence headband before. This feels deeper, in a way, but not too different, not too new, right? It's just that she can never take off this invisible headband. Except maybe by learning Bestow Curse and cursing herself, and that would be going too far into being pathetic.
5 wisdom.
Pilar has had a simultaneous fox's cunning and owl's wisdom before, and this is greater, and not just in the way of +5 versus +4. There is something in it not captured in the measurements. But she's had +4 before. It's not that different. At +5 wisdom, it's very obvious to Pilar that she is lying to herself. She knows she has done the equivalent of putting on an artifact headband she can't take off, and that's before taking into account the actual +4 +6 headband that she still has, returned to her by Keltham in her bag of holding.
How are you feeling?
Like she has become something greater than Pilar was. Stronger, more vigorous. Just walking through the street feels like she's dancing. The world around her filled with things to see, understand, a driving force behind her that will never leave her now. Like life is water, and she has drunken so much of it that she is swollen with it to bursting. Oh, I'm doing fucking great.
How do you manage to make even that sound like whining? Ready to get plane shifted back? I don't mind if you want to hang around and do some shopping.
Ione, I have a real question, and I'd really appreciate a real answer about it. When am I supposed to put on the artifact headband?
If the future goes as foreseen, you decide to do that at some point, and it's not too early or too late when you do. If the future goes astray, I expect snack service will poke you about it. I can't tell you about the future when it's something you're supposed to decide. It obviates.
Yeah, I fucking get it. Just walk around carrying an artifact headband thinking about how I could decide at any time to put it on. Is there a reason I shouldn't do that literally now and get it over with?
Common sense about how you just got +5 to all ability stats and should give yourself longer than 5 minutes to get used to that and grow into the new you before putting on the artifact headband?
I hate that you're right. Okay, you know what? Yes, I'll stick around and continue shopping in the City of Brass. I've still got a large city's annual budget's worth of spending money. There's probably some genuinely interesting stuff for sale, and I'm not actually going to have more fun wandering around on Galarian waiting for snack service to get me into trouble again. Translation from Plush 5. Wisdom. Pilar is terrified of being left on her own to think, doesn't actually want to be alone right now. Everything is scary, and at least Ione Sala sometimes answers her questions.
They go about looking for 2 more 5-wisher sets for Ione for her strength and dexterity, but those businesses are not many, and all that they find already have Keltham's or Carissa's arcane mark writ on the street somewhere nearby. Their search regions have expanded and overlapped. While they're looking, Ione shops and buys expensive things that no sane person would use. When she runs out of money, she finds a noble Efreet and sells more of Doomlord's hoard, and emerges with yet more money.
Even Pilar cannot help but be caught up in the manic energy of it. Pilar doesn't know how Ione can call this good. Or maybe Ione doesn't, and in that case, Pilar absolutely doesn't want to stop her. Ione should come back to evil where she belongs, so they can be allies again. They find a sneering merchant who offers, as though reluctantly, belts of physical might and belts of physical perfection. Pilar buys a +2 to +2 belt of physical perfection just to feel even lighter and more graceful on her feet, and a +4 STR +4 dex belt of physical might for when she wants to be even stronger and more graceful for a lesser time of endurance, and a +6 belt of giant strength just in case she wants to show that off, and a +6 belt of mighty constitution so that she can be tortured for longer, and a +6 belt of incredible dexterity, if only to complete the set. Why shouldn't she? Ione has money and has threatened that if Pilar doesn't spend it, Ione will probably just spend it on good. Pilar buys a hat of disguise. When she finds better at another shop, she buys a greater hat of disguise. With hardly a twinge of horror for the money spent earlier, it's a sunk cost anyways.
They've wandered the city for a time and shopped there. Ione now has dexterity about herself, but lacks strength to complete it all. After so long shopping, the 2 oracles decide to tarry and rest a brief while. They call upon a restaurant that serves 1 customer party at a time and demands magic items in trade. Ione gives the restaurateurs an item that's worth more than their most expensive demand listed and commands them bring forth their best food for humans and their best entertainment for mortal heroes, at least one of whom is good.
The Azure slave who is majordomo there bows, and there is brought for them course after course after course of food, finer than Pilar has ever tasted, in small dishes meant to be eaten with even tinier bites and savored. Bards sing for them. Performer magicians show them miracles while their detect magic sees no spell work. Oiled men wrestle wearing only loincloths that are sometimes shoved aside in the heat of their contest. There's an enchantment about the place by which mortals may consume thrice as much food as the most they can consume and not pain their bellies, and dish follows dish in endless succession. This is the hospitality of the Efreet, if you can afford it. There are wines in small cup after small cup to go with the small dishes. Ione sips it sparingly, as though only to appreciate the taste. Pilar, after some many sips of her own, does feel then as though something wound very tight inside her is relaxing. It is pleasant. She does ask Ione, then Pilar does not know from where the impulse takes her to ask if Ione happens to know of foreknowledge whether it will turn out well and not harm Asmodeus if Pilar drinks a little more. Ione says yes, it is safe for Pilar to drink a little more, and Pilar does.
When Pilar emerges from the restaurant, there is a flush about her, a brightness. She is wearing her +2 belt of physical perfection and is 7 ability points greater in every physical ability stat. It feels like there's a great water wheel turning inside her and powering her, pushing her to do more before this day ends. She wants to dance like Abigail Thrune did in her ballroom, though she never learned how. Would her curse let her if it was for a party? She wants to be as pretty as Abigail Thrune, or at least pretty enough that people look twice. She wants to put on her belt of giant strength and challenge a man to a fight and punch far harder than a wizard girl should, and rouse his wrath and lose to him and be forcibly taken by him and several of his friends in retribution. She wants to be hurt until she screams, hurt until she stops thinking, hurt until she stops being so pathetic, punished and ground into the dirt. There is some terrible, dire fate that waits for her, and she is tired of fearing it, tired of whining about it if she can't just face it right away. Her superiors did tell her that there was some defect in her Asmodeanism, related to seizing things that she wants and having the pride to be more than a golem. Maybe she is finding a little of that pride now. In a half-drunken decision, Pilar buys a +4 headband of splendor, as should not be too much. Her Savarot +6 headband might be too much, but she can deal with 3 points more of splendor than she ever had before. Pilar puts it on herself, and the will that burns through her lifts her up like a hawk taking wing. Then Pilar calls on her curse's power and guides herself and Ione to a shop not meant for mortal customers, a merchant Efreti who honed their fleshcraft through ages long even for fire, and who now perfects the most cherished slaves of other Efreet. His craft is a painful one, and Ione shies from it and refuses. Pilar submits herself to it, to the Efreti's slight surprise. She is held down with chains like any other subject, and things done to her that make her scream for real. It does not quench the thirst inside her, only feeds it. Ione finds some temporary shelter in a great library while all this is going on. Ione's own constitution is also wish-raised and belt-buffed, and she is not tired, but Ione's curse does still hold sway over her. It's unlikely Ione will be able to attune herself to this library and borrow from it, for she does not have time to truly dwell there and learn its stacks. But there is no library book that Ione cannot read now. When the Efreti is done, Pilar is just the same shape as before, and nothing about her is larger or smaller, nor would anyone fail to recognize her face at a glance, except maybe Keltham. But 1,000 subtle imperfections are burned away, and her hair is a truer copper pink than she made it in Ostenso. She is not changed away from herself. She is herself perfected, for the Efreet know this to be art in the crafting of slaves. Pilar calls on her curse's power. She finds 2 bards, a singer and a harp player, a brother and a sister, 2 drow who fled the chaotic darkness for law and fire. They are slaves, but only for their own safety in the city of brass, with a master they chose themselves, and so permissive that they might nearly be free. There is a drow art of playing music which harmonizes with screams, and they know that art. Pilar finds a skillful whip mistress, again a slave but a hireable one, who bears a whip more expensive than the price of her own person. Pilar buys appropriate garments for herself and bright jewels. Pilar rents a pavilion whose price for one night's rental is 1,000 platinum coins. Pilar calls on her curse's power, then she assembles 6 noble Malik out of the city of brass for a revelry. In disguise of a cloaked male slave, she goes to 6 residences and importunes their masters, telling them that a rare entertainment and challenge does await them. Ignan, the language of fire, has come to her tongue from somewhere, and she speaks fluently in the graces of fire, saying, "O noble Malik of the Efreet." There's a mortal girl who delights in pain as few mortals ever do, not a trained slave, but a born one. Let them do come and witness her dance, and if she fails to entertain, then her life is forfeit. Let them come and witness the dance of a born slave, and someday if that woman becomes a goddess, they can brag that they saw her dance when she was mortal. Tonight shall be born a legend of the city of brass, though none of the 6 must speak a single word of these events for a year and a day, as is scarcely any time at all.
Are the 6 Malik suspicious? How could they not be? But the messenger does not bid them follow on the spot. Only assemble in a meeting place they know but have not visited, a small, intimate pavilion whose price for one night's revelry is famously 1,000 platinum coins. Even in the city of brass, where Efreet and Malik do vie to show their pride and wealth, it is a significant expense. With 20 such nights you could buy a wish diamond, even at its fair price in brass from one Efreeti to another. If it's a trick or a trap, it's an expensive enough one that it would be dishonorable not to spring it. to leave their enemy forlorn at the altar after such grandiose preparation that honors them by this expense. So 6 Malik come then to an expensive pavilion that hosts but a single party. 6 Malik do enter into a chamber anointed in every aspect with decor to match, if only about this small volume, the wealth per cubic meter of the palace of the Grand Sultana Ayasela Mialar Khalidla II. Tonight these 6 Malik are as close to being royalty as they will ever be, unless they conquer the city of brass for true 1,000 centuries hence, a fleeting taste of grandeur that the true royalty permits their lesser kind, so they can seethe inside with envy of the true Lady of Flame, and desire her favor.
And Pilar calls on her curse's power. She puts on her belt of dexterity and strength, and dances for the noble Efreet on a pavilion of mithril, though she doesn't know how to dance. Her movements all perfect and sensuous, as though in a dream or granted wish, veils falling from her and jewels staying bright. When enough of Pilar is exposed, the real dance begins. The greatest mortal whip mistress of the city of brass flicks about a whip that sears hot enough to burn through Pilar's planar resistance and make her scream. But unlike the usual and cruel form of this dance, where mortal slaves must dodge and whirl about the searing whip and never miss a step or cease to sway, Pilar Pineda does lean into the whip's kiss, and her sensuous cries do mix with the music of the bards and match it.
When it is done, the 6 noble Malik of the Efreet, all of whom came intending to judge strictly and put this slave to ice on the least of excuses, can none of them say with honor that she should be slain. They stamp their mighty feet in appreciation, honor given by Malik to a mortal slave when the dance is done. A fire is lit that they did not know was in them, and they lust for the victim of the dance. They do inquire as to the purpose of this revel.
And Pilar Pineda tells them that she means to yield herself to one of them. Let the 6 fight. By any contest that does not slay them, she will not be accused by the Sultanate of being a foreigner come to sap their city's strength. 6 shall fight, and 1 shall win her without cost, and the 5 losers shall do her sister oracle, Ione Sala, a small secret service, that shall not risk their life, nor exhaust their wealth, nor harm their reputation, and take but a little of their time. And he who proves himself strongest and most cruel among the noble Malik of the Efreet may not slay her in his victory, nor take her wealth from her or allow it to be taken. But aside from that, he may do utterly as he wishes with her, for the length of a mortal night, even give of her to others does he will, so long as he protects her. And she does swear that none of this is a plot aimed at any of their number, but only a contest for her own amusement, for which insolence she must be made to pay. Come then, battle one another for the right to make her pay, if they are not cowardly. Then Pilar Pineda conducts them to that pavilion's small arena of wrestling, and lets Azur servants bind her, clothed only in bright jewels and a magical belt and headband, in chains whose key is set aside from her, making her an offering and a prize. From the place of her binding, Pilar Pineda watches 6 noble Efreet battle for her, with the lidded eyes of a mortal in lust.
In the end, a victor comes from their mighty contest. It is Befutig Safiza Ujalet who triumphs and whose name passes into this fable. Pilar Pineda heals him as she has healed herself, and he bears her away for the night. As for the other 5, an oracle of Nethys does come to lay hands on them, healing them somewhat if not wholly. She tells them of their forfeit, 5 wishes to be cast for Ione's strength, out of 5 wish diamonds that she bears. And the 5 do honor the fairness of the forfeit. There is a floor price set by the city's laws, but services fairly gambled against services do not violate it. Not one Malik of the city of brass could say this night's gamble was anything but fair.
Then Ione Sala takes herself home to the prime material with something of a sigh, for it seems to her that, somehow, Pilar lives in a more interesting universe than she does. Sometimes Ione wishes that she lived, if not quite in that exact universe, some universe which was at least that interesting. There is probably a version of herself like that, if Ione dared ask Nefreti about it, but Ione Sala dares not ask.
But for Pilar Pineda, her night is only beginning. She is cradled in the arms of a noble Efreet who would still be stronger than herself, even if she girded herself with +6 strength belt above +5, wished. She'd match him pound for pound then, maybe, but he has many more pounds. She is giddy and glorying and does not know to what extent she's drunk on extraplanar wine, or drunk on the new life and strength in her.
Befutig Safiza Ujalet, Yarwain. Befutig Safiza Ujalet flies above the city as Efreet do, and lets the slave girl, Pilar Pineda, look down to witness it, that she may be duly awed by the grandeur of the Efreet. This is the world, and he is showing it to her. To his mansion he takes her, a noble mansion befitting a noble Efreeti. To his bedchambers he takes the slave girl, and makes her scream with pain and pleasure both. Then Befutik Safiza Ujalet finds a new flame lit in him, for this mortal whose lust is not quenched by all his cruelty. He has taken many who did not want him, to whom he was cruel, and he gloried in it. But to have them yield in desire to his cruelty is something he did not want before, for he did not know he could have it. He bids Pilar Pineda stay by his side all her mortal life then. She is a born slave, and he her natural master. They are destined for one another.
But the slave girl shakes her head and says, "Nay, for she already has a natural master, and she must return to the prime material to serve him when the night is done."
Then his jealousy is kindled, and Befutik Safisa Ujalet takes her again and makes her scream for him again. The stamina of a noble Malik of the Efreet is, if not unlimited, great enough that no mortal woman can challenge it, whatever magics are about her. He is not spent, and when he is done, and she lays there panting and thoroughly yielded of herself to him, he does carry her into his mansion's treasury, and show her the wealth of a noble Malik of the Efreet. Silver and gold do lay there in heaps great enough that a magicless mortal could not lift them, and a dozen and a dozen and a dozen things of power, swords and armor lit with jewels. This is his hoard, the hoard of Befutik Safiza Ujalet, greater than the wealth of some mortals who call themselves kings. A slave must have a price, let her name it.
But Pilar Pineda does reach into her bag of holding and pour out platinum bars and faceted rubies and rods and belts of magic, until their sum is greater than all the wealth that he showed to her. And at the end, she takes out a crown wrought of hell, whose fair price would be greater than both those hoards together. "My own wealth is greater," says she, "and my true master's wealth is measureless."
Then his wrath is kindled in truth, and Befutik Safiza Ujalet seizes Pilar Pineda about her hair and drags her back to his bedchambers. "O small and foolish mortal who thinks to defy an Efreeti," he says to her, "I will break you now, and have you pledge yourself to me when you are broken. That does not transgress the bounds you laid on this night."
"If you can break me, you can have me," says she. "Show me the wrath of a Malik and the cruelty of the city of brass."
All his wrath does he pour out onto her then, though he may not kill her. Slaves he sends forth from himself with wealth, and they return bearing instruments of great cruelty. 3 times the slave girl nears death, and 3 times she heals herself and presents herself to him again. After the 3rd time he can hardly bear the strength of his desire for her, and so he takes her back into his treasury and shows her a hidden door. In the room beyond lie 3 wish diamonds he has accumulated through ages, waiting for 5, as is the clock that ticks ever so slowly to measure the long lives of Efreet. Strength and constitution, splendor and wisdom, intelligence and dexterity do Efreet gain in this way. A millennium might pass between one diamond and another, and they agonize whether to become stronger today to accumulate their gains faster tomorrow, or wait today to cast in longer sequences later. "Swear yourself to me, and I shall grant you your wish," he says, as is folly and madness in truth, for a wish is wasted on a mortal that passes away in a century. But the desire in Befutik Safiza Ujalet is such that he cannot bear it.
Not from her bag of holding then, but seemingly from nowhere, Pilar Pineda brings forth a wish diamond and lays it beside the other 3. "My wish is one that only my true master can grant," says she, "though I did enjoy this night."
Then his pride is pricked and skewered, for Efreet do not know gratitude to mortals. He bears her to his bedchamber a final time, and tries his very best to fucking ruin her. After the last encounter he himself lies panting, and Pilar Pineda is a wreck, but not, alas, a broken one. "O greatest flower and jewel among mortals," he says to her then, "there is a secret passed down through ages, which is forbidden, and death to both of us, if any learned that it had been used by those not royalty."
The slave girl croaks and pauses to heal her throat. "I will speak of it to none who do not already know," says she.
"I cannot bear to ever be parted from you, O Pilar Pineda. Pledge yourself to me forever, and I shall use a 3-fold wording passed down in secrecy through ages to spend 3 wishes and make you an Efreeti everlasting." All the splendors of the city of brass shall be yours for eternity, and you be not only my slave but also my wife. I will make you scream for me every day without fail.
O noble Malik of the Efreet, she says, I have received the cruelty of a sensuous priestess of Asmodeus, of the seventh circle, and been used by her. I have been captive and tormented of a mortal queen, who bound an Erinyes to herself, who sought to break me. Yet your cruelty and lust is greater than any cruelty and lust I have felt, and I do not know if I will ever again receive its like. Know that you have satisfied me. And yet I must return to my master.
O Pilar Pineda, tell me who is your master. From them I shall purchase you, though it cost me 1,000 years of service.
But she bows her head and says, My master is Lord Asmodeus, the prince of hell. Only when I am passed into his possession will I know true cruelty and at last be broken.
Then does Befutik Safiza Ujalet know despair?
Pilar Pineda heals herself a final time and restores herself, and rises up, though rather wobbly so.
I shall send you back to the material then, says Befutik Safiza Ujalet. He is tempted as never before to shatter his honor, but it is stronger than he.
I must gather my things, and then let us wander your city first for a time.
He does as she bids, though after watching her try to take a few steps he laughs and carries her again.
Then he shows her one splendor after another of the city of brass, for he is not so in despair that he does not hope at all. There are gardens of such flowers as bloom in fire, and also elemental conservatories where you can see those flowers that bloom in air and water, and blossom in the darkness and pressure of earth. There are flowers that bloom in heaven, and flowers that bloom in the abyss, and Befutig Safiza Ujalet shows them all to Pilar Pineda as though to say, This is how many wonders our fair city could show you, if you asked for flower gardens alone. And did she cast off her mortal flesh and become Efreet? She could see the gardens of 1,000 other planets from other stars and planes, piercing then the veil that lies about the city of brass by which travelers from different planets may never meet, as the gods demanded when this place was made.
And she is moved but not, alas, stayed.
Befutik Safiza Ujalet does plead with her, then, warning her that hell has cruelty but no generosity, it does not have the capacity to prize Pilar Pineda as he would. It will not shower her with gifts to complement its torments. Her beautiful form will never know the touch of a caressing hand to soothe the whip's bite before it lands again. O Pilar, why would she forsake the cruelty of the Efreet for the cruelty of hell? She was made to be a slave, but let her choose a more appreciative master than Asmodeus. If the screams he draws from her are not enough, he will apprentice himself to more skilled torturers.
The slave girl is silent for a long time. I do not need my master's appreciation nor his caress, she says.
You lie.
I did. But though you could be my master, you could not be my god, for you would be content to sate your cruelty on me and not desire to perfect me as I must be perfected. Efreet are lawful, but they are not of law.
Your cruelty is indeed the cruelty of hell, he says. How will I ever know satisfaction again, after tasting your savor and then being denied it forever? I am sworn not to take your life for it. But tell me what enemy of mine laid this trap for me, that I may spend the rest of my eternity on vengeance.
Did I not swear this was no trap of your enemy, says Pilar. You have shown me your might, now let me show you mine.
The slave girl closes her eyes, and the fragile beauty of her mortal face seems to fill his vision. Then her eyes open, and they are standing in the warehouse of a slave market where no mortal of Galarian should ever be, before a slave pen where young girl children crawl upon 10 legs and eat the rotting corpses of things with more legs than that.
You cannot be here, says Befutig Safiza Ujalet. He must exert himself to not let his own form change in this place. The city of brass itself would be forfeit.
But Pilar Pineda points to one girl child who glares at them from a corner with emerald-faceted eyes, as though daring them to try and take her from her sisters. She has also my nature, Pilar Pineda says, if you buy her and see her well raised to become a slave that leans into the whip and repays cruelty with desire. Only buy her sisters also, and treat them kindly, and never threaten them to threaten her, for that she will never forgive as mortal nor Efreeti. Free them and send them home, when they are grown enough to be safe returning, and she'll be yours forever.
It is not in the nature of Efreet to know gratitude, but they know debt and hierarchy. Befutig Safiza Ujalet does acknowledge then that Pilar Pineda has shown herself grander than he, and that he owes her any one service she asks, short of his life or future wife.
And I do acknowledge the City of Brass in turn, she says, for showing me my own pride that I did not know I had in me. But now it is time for me to return, for as you say, I must not be here.
To what fate do you return? I have not missed that such a revel as this is one that a mortal might undertake, knowing they were not long for their flesh. There is a saying among the Efreet, "Eat, drink, and be merry, for even gods can die." Is it that which you are doing?
Perhaps. Perhaps I go now to die, perhaps to become a goddess, perhaps to be made traitor. Only my companion knew what fate is set for me, and she would not say. Whatever it is to be, I'll try to hold to this pride and not whine about it. Now send me back from the City of Brass also, to serve Asmodeus in Golarion, and then in hell. I am twice tempted now and twice refused. The third temptation will see me his true servant forever, or break me, if the tropes hold true.
And if all this is to become a fable of the City of Brass in a year and a day, or if by then the City of Brass will have been consumed utterly in ruin, whether in Golarion this is to become a tale of a deed of Pilar Pineda when she was mortal, or if her fate lies down some other road entirely, that is yet to be seen. Her companion Oracle knew what was fated once, but fate is now cracked, if maybe not shattered. And even that cracked fate Ione Sala has not spoken of as yet, where things that watch can see her. If they want to know what comes, they shall have to continue watching to witness it.
If you wish to support this AI reading and others like it, please visit patreon.com/AskWhoCastsAI. Any help is appreciated. And thank you to executive producer John Doe 7776059.